Good morning. So we're going to go through a sequence to practice spinning fire poi at a professional level, or adhering to the flow state. So when you do this, you want to have the training sequence or the practice sequence sort of like build up, so that one thing causes the next thing. So when you're practicing flow, you can't just decide to do a trick. The trick kind of has to emerge in and of itself, or the movement has to emerge in and of itself. So you always start out very simple. So the first step is to remove the duality of the system. That is a very deep activity that ultimately involves the entire body. For the sake of this video, we're just going to be talking about the poi itself and not my body as much. So we want to put the poi into what we'll call flow state, which is where everything is equal. Everything has equal weight, everything has equal tension, right? And so this is kind of almost impossible to do long term, but you can at least push the system in that direction. So here's where there's a lot of tension, a lot of duality in the system, to where my hand is holding the head in orbit. And so the head is pulling on my hand at every single point. My hand's staying in place, and this thing's moving a lot. So we want to equalize that system to where the head is moving my hand as much as the hand is moving my head. And then not only that, even the string itself is moving my hand and the head as much as the head and the hand are moving the string. So instead of there being like a head, a hand, and a string, this is just one event moving. It's just one object. So my hand, the string, and the poi have to become one object, and that's putting this into the flow state. So once you have that, like let's say it's not there 100%, but you go from 0 to, okay, let's get this 50% more equalized. Then the main move in poi is this 3-beat weave, right? And so we want to get that to where we're doing this movement. Can we work up to doing this movement in isolation or suspended? And so that suspended state is what you want to be in all the time. There's really no reason to ever lose contact with that state where the string is moving the hand and the head and everything's tied together. So doing it with two of them is a little hard, so you can kind of warm up with, can you do it on both sides of the body? And these are, I think this is just called isolations. I don't know. I've never learned poi. Nobody's taught me. And so a lot of the time when there's a transition between a state is when the system will shift into duality or into polarity, right? So I want to work on how do I coax it over here so I'm not having to pull on it to get it to change sides, right? And so ultimately it's going to be like the poi is going to move, I'm going to move, the whole thing. And so it's almost like you get it to where the string is floating in the air. It's like, how do I get the string to float? And then how do I, since the string's floating, and I don't want to pull on the string, I want to very gently move the whole system over to the other side, or move the whole thing. So once you're in the flow state, you're listening. You're listening because you can't, if you pull the head over to the side, you're breaking the drill, right? So once it's weightless, how is it you're listening for some external force to like blow the weightless system into a different configuration. And make sure you can do that with both sides, right? And where the system is weightless, right, is where you have this weightless point, that's the area where you have the greatest amount of choice. So if you're wanting your body or the poi to be able to do something, this area where it's like suspended is where you can grab on it and pull it in any direction that you want. And then once you pull it in a direction that you want, right, let's say you want to maintain the isolation, you could be over here and you go, okay, isolated. How do I get it to like blow to the other side so that so you don't lose the isolation, or you don't lose the weightlessness of the system, or the interconnectedness of everything. The other way to get everything like super connected is to just add a bunch of tension, and the tension kind of pulls everything together. But then at that point, it kind of loses the listening. And so it's kind of two ends of the two ends of the spectrum. One is like to be a non-object, suspended in mind. And so that means, like, for all of this stuff, to get this suspended, there's a cycle happening, right? There's a cycle happening, and if you participate with that cycle correctly, like if you start to cycle with the cycle, and that doesn't mean like do exactly what the cycle is doing, that looks kind of like this, right? Like if you find a cycle, like the main cycle to find is the breath, but the blood cycling, your metabolism's cycling, everything's kind of cycling, even down to atoms, they're vibrating. And so anytime that there's a cycle, so like the poi swinging, this is a cycle, this is a periodic movement. If you find that and you mimic or you copy or you do that periodic movement with the thing that's cycling, you'll get to this equilibrium point where the system's like suspended and weightless. So it's not identical to what's happening, nor is it just anchored in place and having what's happening happen all around it. So when people train or practice some of this stuff, you can have the event, or you can have the breath just cycle around an anchor point, and that's never going to actually enter the flow state. And also trying to just like do, trying to copy, trying to become the cyclical movement is also never really going to enter flow state. So flow state is this like this participation. It's a little bit like how you would get the poi to stall. This happens naturally in water, right? Like if I were to throw this in water, it kind of naturally finds its balance point where the string is just floating. The whole thing is kind of one system. You can, if you do this correctly, like if you throw the handle basically at the right rate, the string has the same mechanics as if it was underwater. So this space, like this is where jugglers, circus performers, dancers, like they just live right here at their particular craft. This level of suspendedness, they stay there. Like if you're just in it, then the movements reflect that you're in it. And so that's the tier. Like in the last video, this is the tier, the level change between somebody who's doing it professionally and somebody who's doing it amateur. For like every sport, the people at the top level live basically right here. And so that's when you have somebody that just is like doing isolations or doing just existing, they're just kind of existing in the middle of what is a trick for other people. And that's this like suspended, relaxed, ultra receptive place. This is even how you get good at magic tricks and sleight of hand, because comedy, you're up there just living in that flow space, and the receptivity is the same as if you were just dead weight in the water. So you just know exactly when to respond to the system and how. It's an extreme form of listening. Like listening is where you're existing in this space, because to be floating, or to be aware of floating, is to be responsive to the field or the medium that you're in. And this is, I mean, even if you wanted to get down to like diet, exercise, and stuff like that, people who are attractive, people who are skinny to a healthy level, right? Not skinny, but appropriate weight, they're existing in a state or a condition that somebody who's fatter considers to be starving. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to be able to diet, lose my weight, get down to this appropriate weight, and then you have to be restricting or starving yourself to the degree that you want to be that size. Like your size is genuinely just a choice. And so, but it's kind of like depriving yourself of oxygen or food or going out and running. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to shift, right? It's comfortable to let go. It's comfortable to follow like pleasure, but it's uncomfortable to shift the other direction. And so people are like, oh, I have to be like diets don't work because as soon as you stop dieting, yeah, of course, yeah, you just never stop dieting. That's it. You just never stop dieting. To eventually, it doesn't feel like a diet to you. But to your former self, you're just always on a diet. It's the same with any sort of this like training stuff, as to where you practice a thing and you go, oh man, okay, I just have to always be doing isolations, and I have to consider myself a failure if I ever come out of isolation. And then that makes it so that you're having that level of weightlessness in all of your movements all the time. That level of weightlessness is also that level of like listening. And it's like a yin yang. You're never going to get to like perfect tension, and you're probably never going to get to like total weightlessness. I think sometimes you can get to total weightlessness, but it's like almost only in movements where you're like drawing away from everyone. So it's never going to be something that you record. It's probably never going to be something that you see, except if people like make kind of a special, isolated, withdrawn container. You can like witness the peaks of human performance, which come from like dropping deeply into the flow state. But the consequences of that is that it is away from everything. It's isolated, it's special. It's never going to be something that is seen by large aspects of the surface, because it's not where it happens. So it never gets caught on camera. It never, there's a bunch of different things like this, different phenomenon that happen or that are experienced as a result of dropping under the surface, which synchronistically keeps you away from being seen, being observed, being recorded. So people often have, a lot of people have like much higher skill in the recesses of their own being or in the recesses of their own mind, and it's just difficult to actually show that without the correct container. So part of that is to realize that like, oh, just let go of being seen if you want to chase the movement because of that, but then also like the correct, a skillfully constructed society or a training method should let people access the depths of their being in community, and for them to show or reveal those deeper parts and to have it be like witnessed. But otherwise they're in different areas. That which can be displayed, shown off, viewed is not that which is deep. And so with these isolations, once I find out, okay, I've turned it into a single object, well, okay, now let's move that single object around. And that kind of simplifies the whole thing and really opens up like, okay, I have this single flow state object that's my whole body, like the staff, and then I can move that that thing around. So practice finding that unification single object, and then just practice walking. It might look goofy at first, and that's always because you're doing the technique and trying to accomplish things while you're doing the technique, when in reality it's like that has to be your background state. Like I need to be at this neutral balance point no matter what trick I'm trying to get the poi to do, or what position I want my body to be in. And it's just like learning how to swim, to where it's like you'll get what I'm saying, drop into it and be like, whoa, I understand the flow state. And that's like noticing that you're immersed in water, and that you're like, okay, now that I know that I'm immersed in water, I'm doing something that makes sense. Like I'm swimming freestyle, and then you realize that even as you swim freestyle, like you can correct so many things about it, and like dig in and work on your technique. You can even work on just the catch and get perfect catch technique, perfect whatever, and then all that comes together, and still it's just the whole stroke, and it's over and over and over, and there's never a correct rep, there's never an event in the flow state. It's all based off of what was going on, and it never ends, and so you never get the correct technique, but you can zero in on any point of it and drill like, oh, do I have a good catch? Do I have a good, is my posture correct? So that happens anytime you're doing the flow state stuff. It's identical to swim training. It's like swimming nested inside of the other event, like swimming nested inside of thinking, swimming nested inside of dancing. Because it's utilizing your metabolism, which is the basically the direction and the charge of your blood. You're using that to accomplish your task. So it's inherently like moving. It's inherently like interacting with water that has like charge or current or direction to it. So it's got elements of swimming, surfing, etc. And so even with this, I can see like where are areas where it feels empty, and where are areas where this feels too full. And it right here, I'm pulling on it here more than I am at other areas. So I need to pull on it a little bit more at the rest of the cycle, and pull on it less here, so that it's even. And so you can find that if you reduce the tension by falling into the flow state, but then let go of the goal of complete tension loss and use what tension is there evenly. And that makes the tension like extremely powerful. You take away as much responsibility from it as possible, but still don't try and get rid of its presence, just distribute it equally so that the tension is basically just surface tension. Then once that happens, you've got a single event happening here, so you can just grab the event, which is and if you really, instead of just trying to do this over and over again, you'll see that it's like it's having points, it's wanting to add tension in certain places. Then if you really let go, you go, okay, I'm just gonna move however it takes to maintain, like, you go, oh wow, there's really unbalanced tension there, and you fall away from it with the whole body, and that generates kind of a flow state dance thing, to where you're not doing a sequence of movements, nor are you just like trying to be spastic, but you're following the movement of the water. So that's the same thing with writing, with thinking. Things that make notes, things that resonate as beautiful, things that emit vibration, have that perfect amount of tension and compression, and so that makes their surface weightless, wave-like, fluidic, and capable of like emitting waves, absorbing waves. Like that's everything from like, you know, the metal slats on a xylophone. A lot of musical instruments, like guitar strings, you know, even the air. People can put the air under the correct amount of tension compression to like basically cause this isolation, and then when you have the isolation, it'll ring out. This is the source of all color and light that you see. Is like the electrons on that, the fluidity, the breath on that area is fluid and flapping at this rate, and you feel that wave. The only time anything can wave is at that level that it's weightless, where it can go up or down. For something to be able to conduct waves, it has to be able to go up or down equally. Otherwise, it has to be at that neutral point where it can't conduct a wave, which is a movement up and down or around. So where this is happening is that's the source of all perception. All perception, all experiencing is, if you're trying to find where you're already doing the flow state to expand it, it is light. It is perception. And then this is it it's fractal. So this is the rope and the poi and everything is emitting light, basically, which is why you find it interesting when somebody does it. When somebody does this to poi, it grabs your attention. An isolation or something, it grabs your attention, and that's because it starts to emit a type of light. Anything you see grabbing your attention is emitting light, and light is it's a wave in the ether. So if you have the ether stretched taught, like a guitar string or like a xylophone bar, the reason that surface is basically flapping, is vibrating. That vibration, that wave in the ether, is experience. If something's either held to an extreme, like a positive or a negative, it can't hold a wave, it can't hold a vibration, because the surface never moves. It's like it's held under pressure, and so then even if you send a force to it, the pressure just changes. It doesn't go up and down over the surface of the neutrality of that object, so you don't experience that, you don't see it. That's what's happening on the inside of objects. That's why you can't see them or experience them, is because they're so far away from the surface, either with compression basically, that it can't support waves, so you don't get any experience from it, you don't get any light from it. Like a slinky has to be at the resting point for it to like start to vibrate up and down. If something's compressing it, it doesn't slinky, or if something's pulling it apart, it doesn't slinky. And so yeah, that's another way to look at, like, if you want to be a professional dancer, do something professionally, you have to get your craft, your medium, the object, and you have to move it like this. You have to put it at a neutral point and then allow it to conduct waves. Those waves that it conducts are seen as light, as people. It's interesting. That's why a comedian isn't just somebody that's up there saying the jokes. They have to be up there and emitting the light. The jokes have to be at this tension point between like what's socially acceptable and what's not, or whatever, the tension of humor, the tension of all that. It's because the words and the jokes and the delivery is at that tension point, they emit, the words, the sentences, the person actually emits light. Light, in the way that I'm describing, is everything that grabs your attention. Anything that you are attending to is emitting light. The attention is the light. So people can give you light, you can emit light. But ultimately, that's what light actually is. Light is, it's not a photon. It's where you exist in tension with the object, such that between you and the objects is a surface that can support waves, and that requires half of what makes it such that something can like radiate or sing or be heard is your posture, your position in relationship to it. So you can change yourself such that your relationship to like the inside of objects or the inside of matter is suddenly closer to a neutral point, and you'll start experiencing sensation or phenomenon from it. The same way that if you suspend a xylophone bar on the xylophone, you can hit it and you'll start to experience information from that bar. Everything is like that with a shift in consciousness. So as if people shift their tension pressure patterns, they can shift what they receive sound or light or information from. And that's sort of a basic like poi warm-up. And from there you do your reps.